Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Face the Facts. I'm your host, April Moss, and we see what's happening in America today as continually each day we watch the news, we see what's happening in our culture and society, and it's not the America that we grew up in. It's not the America that we have grown to love. Today, we're seeing just a radicalization among progressive Democrats. And also, we're witnessing rhinos, Republicans in name only, effectively working together to take down this country. Now, joining me today to discuss the plight of America and how we got here is author Anders Edwardsson. And I'm so delighted for him to join the show. Thank you for being here. Your book, Radical Betrayal, is now for sale. And we're going to talk about this. Anders, I'm curious, you are not an American-born citizen, although you live here in the United States now. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you felt compelled to write a book on what's happening to this wonderful country.
Thank you, April. Thank you for having me. You gave it away. My Boston accent beside. I'm from Sweden originally, so I have this Scandinavian singing accent, and it comes with a number of grammatical errors now and then. But I hope you can understand me.
You sound great.
Thank you. I got fascinated by America as a 10-year-old. I managed to nag my mother to sit up on election night in 1980 and watch the election results on Swedish TV. They were in the middle of the night over there. And even if I didn't really speak the language or anything, it was just something with Reagan and America and American politics. And when I started to read up on American history, we also had a lot of American relatives in my family. It's a great, big family of immigrants to America since over 100 years back. So, and I wanted to move here my whole life, and I traveled back and forth. And in 2011, I finally managed to get over here permanently and found a wife, a lovely wife, and then I have also found a lovely citizenship in 2016. And raising that right hand and swear the oath and becoming an American was one of the proudest days of my life. So, and I wrote this book because I felt that something was off. America of today is not the America of 1980. Naturally, everything changes all the time. So I'm not a reactionary who wished to go back to 1980 or 1955 or something like that. But something un-American is going on in America today. And I managed to use my PhD studies in politics up in DC to write a dissertation on this topic. And after I was done with that, I rewrote it, cooked it down, made it more understandable, cleaned away all the academic mumbo-jumbo as much as I could. And it ended up in this book, Radical Betrayal. And its thesis is in the subtitle, how liberals and neoconservatives, and as you say, also rhinos, are wrecking American exceptionalism. And to make a very long story very short, American exceptionalism is the basic narrative of America. The oath of allegiance, so to speak, that everyone who has moved here over the centuries has been expected to accept and sign under and be proud of, being different from every other country in a good way, being a peaceful capitalistic free market economy that made America the richest country in the world in just over 100 years. But since around 1900, forces, radical forces on both the left and the right, has started to disregard or even disrespect this great heritage, exceptionalist heritage. And today we are in such dire straits that roughly half the country don't even like what America is anymore.
I would say also there's a very large majority of Americans still that don't understand how detrimental the actions of the current GOP have been in not protecting our rights and not valuing the Constitution in the way it seems like it's always America last, always coming out of Washington. And yet there's a lot of people that would say, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. But those that are cued in, and a lot of the people in my audience are wide awake to what's going on. What tell us a little bit about what you've seen, because I think it's interesting. Those that have an outside perspective on America, who haven't been born here, but they have the great love and pride, a sense of pride in this country and becoming legal citizens of this country. Um, it's embarrassing that so many of legal immigrants know more about the Constitution and understand how our country works than natural born citizens here. And I know a lot of that is in part to public schools dumbing people down and the overall agenda to really make people distracted and not paying attention to things. But I'm curious, from your perspective, tell us what you're seeing in what you say the neoconservatives, and also how the progressive Democrats are destroying the American dream, so to speak.
It's two parallel stories, and if we it's easiest to start with a sum up of what's have been going on the left, because it's very much framed the story on the right in a way. And short on the left, in around 1900, the Democratic Party was in shambles. Earlier, it had been, in many ways, a more conservative party than the Republicans. So that was very much an establishment, center-right kind of party. But because their support for slavery and the South in the Civil War, the Democratic Party had won only two presidential elections since what will it be, 1860. So they said, we must do something. We must rebrand ourselves. And they did this to a large extent by absorbing the so-called progressive movement, which was a form of, what can we call it, socialism light. It was a radical progressive movement among academics and intellectuals who wanted to make America more like Europe. And starting with Bryan and later Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic Party started to distance itself more and more from the American exceptionalism and the great American heritage. And this was a very, very slow development. It's actually still going on to some extent. But if you start with Woodrow Wilson and then Franklin D. Roosevelt and Lyndon B. Johnson in the 1960s, those three together more or less turned the Democratic Party into a European social democratic welfare state party. And that doesn't go very well with the original American exceptionalist heritage, because that implies rather low taxes, few regulations, state rights, individual freedoms, and all the things that is antithetical to social democracy. And the latest of this long row of social democratic stooges, as I call them, was of course Barack Obama, under which the Democratic Party not only continued to steer towards the abyss to the left, but put the pedal to the metal, and today are hanging in the air over the abyss, more or less.
He said he
And
wanted to fundamentally change America, and he sure has.
absolutely,
Hmm.
and that's the one side, the left side, and the big side of what I'm trying to say with my book, Radical Betrayal, because this has been the American left has deliberately over the decades committed a great betrayal of American exceptionalism because they simply don't like what it demands policy wise. The story on the right is a bit more complicated and nuanced. It started with the Spanish American War in 1898. And when a group of mainly Republicans decided that America was not only so good that it should be a model for other countries to follow, it was so good and had become so rich and powerful that America should send troops abroad to change other countries to become like America.
Hmm.
And in the Spanish-American War, that first and foremost, we are talking about Cuba, which was what the war was mostly about, but it also became about Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines. And this changed. It was a break with the peaceful, someone call it is isolationist, but I call it a peaceful foreign policy, where America was prepared to help others but not send troops abroad. And this was accepted first by the Republican Party, but very quickly also by the Democrats, because in 1912, Woodrow Wilson became president and dragged America into the First World War after a few years. And from there on, everything, the so-called banana wars in the Caribbean, the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, and all the wars we have now. And they have done all this, they have explained and defended this aggressive foreign policy with an exceptionalist sounding rhetoric. And after the catastrophe in Iraq, uh, this has led to that a lot of people, good, patriotic, salt of the earth Americans, have started to say, this American exceptionalism, what is that? So they have, not deliberately, but they have started to become alienated from the national heritage also, because neocons and rhinos and others have misused and corrupted the language and what American exceptionalism is all about.
Hmm.
So here you
Could you
have, sorry.
Could you, Anders, for those that are listening and say, I don't even know what a neocon is, can you explain what a neoconservative is?
Well, the neocon movement started in the 1960s, and it was originally a group of mostly former hard left politicians, intellectuals, journalists who had they were smart enough to realize back then that communism didn't work, and they was honestly appalled by all the crimes committed by Stalin and Mao and Soviet Union and the communist regimes all over the place. So they came to a partial insight, so to speak, that communism and socialism doesn't work. So they switched side, but they did it. They went from one extreme to the next, and instead of wanting to implement communism through violence and revolution. They went to become foreign policy conservative hardliners. And they also adopted a corrupt version of the so-called supply side economic theory. Just to, they were so tired of the left that they wanted to become more right than the right was itself. And when you take it to the extremes, doesn't really work.
Right.
So and this small clique of the first generation of neocons has then grown to the latest clear-cut example is George W. Bush, or at least his administration, that invaded not only Afghanistan but Iraq. And the Democrats has been eager to follow this. Clinton in the 90s waged I don't know how many wars, Haiti, Bosnia, and Obama, Syria, Libya. And I dare to say that the intent with all these wars were and are good. They want to do these places better for the people living there. But they are totally ideologically blinded to the historical, cultural, social, you name it,
Exactly.
obstacles for turning a desert, a 5,000-year-old desert autocrat like Iraq into New England-like democracy with free markets. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the price we have paid in dollars and blood to
Mhm.
do this is horrendous.
Well, not only that, but then you bring it back to present day, and our government is more willing to ship off our tax dollars to Ukraine and everywhere else except to defend our own border. And these are the policies that are destroying this country. As you know, you have a lot of NGOs and other wealthy people who are helping to fund, in the United Nations as well, the surge of immigrants up through Central America into our borders to, completely overwhelm our airports, our hospitals, our, housing, all of it. And, there's a lot of people that are extremely concerned about this, that we want to preserve our American traditional values and we welcome people to come in legally. But this, infiltration into our country, bringing in all kinds of danger and terrorists and everything else, is incredibly alarming. And it seems like there's not going to be an end in sight unless Donald Trump becomes president again. And I know in your book you talked about how hit the latest political attack against him, just trying to bleed him dry financially with, indictment after indictment and all the lawfare. Uh, what are your comments on that regarding Donald Trump becoming president again, and just the attack that you've seen on him?
That's three huge questions. I will try to answer them in legal order, so to speak. First, Ukraine. I know a lot of Ukrainians. I love them. They are a wonderful people. Unfortunately, that country is as corrupt as they come almost. And it's I wish we could help them to victory in this war. I truly do. But I'm not sure we can do it because the Russians and Putin is now. This is all more politics than military now. If Putin gives up, he will be ousted from power and probably hung up somewhere in his feet like Mussolini did. Ended up one time. So, but I don't know. But the thing is that the principal thing with Ukraine and the debate if we should send them more money or not is that it's you start to clean house at home. You don't waste money. We are 34 trillion plus ticking in debt already. You don't send money abroad to secure another country's border until you have secured your own. It's absolutely ludicrous. And everyone's like, oh, America is so rich, we can do both. Well, we have done both, and three and four and five and 15 different things for over 100 years now. And we are slowly but steadily closing into a national bankruptcy, partly because of these wars. The big thing is the federal welfare state, but that's a different thing. But just 80 billion here and 80 billion there, to Travis, what Henry Ford said, it becomes money in the end.
Mm-hmm.
The second question about that is connected to that and illegal immigration and stuff. As an immigrant myself, I completely understand those people who wants to come here because they love America and wants to build a better life and all that. That's not the point. But just to take myself, sorry, as an example there, I struggled for 30 years plus before I could come over here in a legal matter. And when I came here, I had already read up about on America. I liked what America was, and I have adapted as much as I can. These, I don't know how many, maybe it's only a minority, but still of so many millions of people, even if just a relatively small minority of those who comes illegally, except for destroying the system, the immigration system, that's a huge problem. Because if you are not prepared to learn English, not prepared to adapt to even the most basic social and cultural rules, a country, especially a country with a very short and diverse history as the U.S., must have this common ground. What we call American exceptionalism. You come here because you like it, and you accept it, and you adapt to it as good as you can. Okay, if you bring an 85-year-old grandma here, maybe it's a little bit over the top to demand that she would learn English, but most people who come are young and want to make a living here. So to have a bleeding border like this is a societal suicide in the long run. Europe is going through exactly the same thing as we speak. Germany, Sweden, France, Britain, they are all falling apart slowly but steadily, and are more or less war zones, some areas of them, because they just open their borders, and enormous amounts of people who only want the goodies from coming here, entitlements and stuff, and they just create problems. What was it? A couple of days ago, it was 2 or 3 ethnic groups of people from Eritrea, I think somewhere up north, who started to fight each other during a cultural festival because we are importing problems.
Yeah. Well, and what people don't understand, and we are going to do a separate show on this, so I won't go too much into detail, but the IOM is the UN's migration platform, and their entire agenda is to push up these people into America. I mean, people have to be aware of this, that this is an organized, planned out thing. This isn't just random people deciding to pick up their suitcases and cross the Mexico border for a better life. This is something that is being planned, and a significant amount of dollars are being spent to force up people into our nation with the intent on destroying our country. And it's, for some people, they say, well, that how could that be? That could never happen. But it is actually what is happening. And So we'll get into that on a different show. But I know that President Reagan was someone that you really idolized, you looked up to, you respected his policies. You talk about him in your book, Radical Betrayal. Um, do you feel like President Trump is like a Reagan in many respects, or I'd love to hear your thoughts on him.
Let me first just make one more comment about the immigration thing. That's the open border philosophy is
Mhm.
another example of a radical betrayal where the extreme left and the extreme right are holding hands. Because this open border philosophy driving this rests on both the extreme left's willingness to undermine what is America and Americanism, simply because they don't like it. They want to take in people with that dilute and dissolves the great American heritage by not demanding that they adapt and assimilate. And on the right, they have thrown some cockamamie theories in about that. Well, since we in the West we don't make so many babies anymore, we need labor,
More
the labor
workers.
force, and all this. And these two have found each other in a bizarre marriage of scorpions that leads to this, plus the Democratic Party's need for more voters. But that's
Right.
more
We could have a
that's
whole
more or less
show
that's
just on
so
that.
obvious that we don't even really need to talk about it. Then
Hmm.
Trump. Uh, Trump is not Reagan. Just as little as Reagan was George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or something. Uh, to continue looking for a new Reagan, or as the Democrats are doing, a new JFK or something, LBJ, that's just waste of time, because every time is unique. It gives birth to political figures, good and bad, necessary and some unnecessary, like Obama, if you ask me,
Right.
who was elected only because he was 50% black and nothing else. Um, uh, so Trump is, I like him. He has his flaws, like we all do, the fallen human beings.
Mhm.
He can be a little impatient sometimes and all that. But he is the square plug in the round hole this country needs right now, because he can't be bought. He can't be persuaded by the DC elite to do things that he honestly thinks is bad for this country. So I think and I hope that he will come back, do a Grover Cleveland, and come back for a second term. But if that will actually happen, that remains to be seen, because if nothing else, there was so much weirdness going on in 2020 with these small armies of mules and mail-in votes and everything. And I think they are so desperate that they will probably try the same stunt one more time. I just think and hope that the American public, who is the smartest people on earth, saw what happened in 2020 and will not allow it to happen again.
I hope that too. And I know we have a lot of things that still need to get fixed about our voting systems, but we're working, a lot of people are working every day to try to ensure uh, better elections for this upcoming one in November. Uh, So, Anders, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to read your book. Everyone, head over to radicalbetrayal.com. You can purchase this book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you.